In today's episode, Jordan Phillips tells us that one of the biggest things that he learned from his dad, even though it drove him crazy when he was younger, was to take the road less traveled. And that's exactly what Jordan did. After 2 deployments, years of infertility, and a failed round of in vitro, Jordan and his wife Amy weren't even sure if parenthood was in the cards for them. They had a different path, and that path ultimately led to adoption and finally led them to where they ended up with 4 kids and a beautiful family. Sometimes the road that we end up on feels like the wrong path, and yet we realize once we get to our destination that we were being prepared all along, and it was exactly the road we needed to take. Here's Jordan Phillips. Hey, Jordan, excited to have you on the podcast today. And really, I'm excited to introduce you to the audience here because you've got a really cool story. And I also think very highly of you in the experiences that we've had together. And so excited to introduce you to all the dads here listening to the Dadical podcast. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation, Seth. You know, I was thinking about it, and we just celebrated an anniversary, our 20-year anniversary. Yeah, we met in 2006, so it's been 20 years. Time flies.
And you didn't get me anything.
I gave you this. This is
good enough.
Gift. Yeah.
Good enough. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining. And that's funny. I didn't even realize that it's been 20 years. That's a long time.
It's been a long time. We got a few more wrinkles and a few more grays and a few less hairs, but yeah, it's been quite a journey in the last 20 years.
Well, and life has changed quite a bit since we knew each other. I think at the time, both of us were pretty newly married, and I had one young kid at the time, and you were still working on starting your family, and so lots has changed. And so I'd love to have you maybe just introduce us a little bit into where you are now. Tell us about your family. Tell us about kind of your background, and we'll dive in from there.
Yeah, where I'm at right now is we live in the Houston, Texas area. We're just on the north side of Houston in the Woodlands area. We've been in Texas for 11 and a half, going on 12 years. So it's starting to become or feel a lot more like home. We've had 2 of our 4 kids were born in Texas, so they're true-blooded Texans, and the other 2 were we moved here early enough in their years where all they know is Texas. So we love it here, but originally grew up in southern Idaho, small town, southern Idaho farm boy. You know, a lot of my formative experiences in youth were around working on a farm and just a lot of fun life lessons and experiences that came from growing up in that area, in that environment. I've been married to my sweetheart Amy for 22 years.
Don't mess it up.
I know. Hopefully she doesn't listen to this. I think that's right. And she'll have to fact check me. I feel like after 20, it's like you can just say 20 plus, and it's considered good enough. But for anyone doing math on that, I mean, I'm maybe not quite as old as that might sound. We got married really young. She was 18, I was 19, and we had everything figured out at the age of 18 and 19. And knew exactly how the world worked, and we had plans, and we were the smartest people in the room at the time, and didn't necessarily want to listen to the advice of parents. And but it was okay. Like everything has worked out just beautifully over the last 22 years, and we've had our fair share of struggles and challenges, and a lot of things that we never expected to go through. Individually and as a couple and as a family, but all those experiences, all those challenges have been so rewarding, and it's made us the people we are today. I'm happy to talk a little bit more about some of that background and some of those just stories from the past.
Well, we'll talk through them. Maybe just give us an idea of what are the challenges that you're referring to, and then we'll be able to dissect them a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So. In terms of our relationship as husband and wife, we have a great relationship. We've always just found a way to get along great. And you know, I consider Amy my best friend, and I think she considers me her best friend still. I'm not the easiest to live with some days, as maybe a lot of husbands can resonate with that statement. But yeah, I mean, we knew each other in high school, and we were basically high school sweethearts. And like I said, we got married young, and I decided right after we were married, or just before we got married, I made the decision to join the military. And this was in 2003, which for anyone that remembers what was happening in the world in 2003, there was this little thing called the Iraq conflict. It just kind of spun up. And, again, in my very wise 19-year-old brain, I thought, hey, if I join the military, this is going to be a great way to pay for school. And it was. It did eventually pay for school. But what happened that wasn't part of the plan or wasn't predicted was after I went to basic training, which was after we'd only been married for about 4 months. So I left for 6 months, 4 months into marriage for basic training, advanced training. And about halfway through that experience, I got a notification that my unit that I was assigned to was going to be mobilized to be deployed overseas to Iraq. And I thought, that can't be right. Like I'm just supposed to be doing this to go to school. Like I'm not supposed to go to war. That wasn't part of the plan. And so I felt like if I just kind of I don't know, avoided the realities of just what was happening in the world, or maybe thought that no, there's got to be a way out of this. No, like I shouldn't be doing this. It's not part of my plan. That it would just go away, and it didn't. We ultimately, after I got home from basic training and advanced training, had a few weeks together, and then wasn't too long after that I turned around and left again for a year and a half, and did more training. Was overseas for a little over a year, and so the first 5 years of our marriage, Amy and I did the math on this. It was, I think we had spent one or maybe two anniversaries together out of the first 5 years of our marriage. So again, we started young, but the first 5 years we were apart more than we were together, and obviously that was hard. But I had a lot of good friends in the military, and what I saw during that time was that, especially those that were married, I saw relationships that would either thrive, or I saw relationships that would fall apart. So that distance either makes you stronger or it makes you weaker, and it really kind of exposes just what's at the core of that relationship. What is your foundation built on? And again,
Let me pause you real quick,
yeah.
Jordan. Sorry. So when I started this podcast, I never expected it to become a marriage relationship podcast, and it's not, right. It's about us as dads, but I think one thing maybe I discounted is how crucial that marriage relationship is to being a successful father to your children. And so you mentioned a couple things that I'd love to dig into a little bit better. Now, number one is, in fact, let's start here. You're gone for 5 years, or I'm sorry, you're gone for 3 of the 5 years that you're married. I mean, you're a brand new couple, still figuring things out, and
Right.
yet you throw this gigantic wrench into the mix. What impact does that have on your relationship?
It ultimately was good. It ultimately was just what we needed. At the time, if you would have asked me in the middle of those 5 years, I would have said, this is terrible. Why is this happening? Why me? I had the mindset and attitude that why is this happening to me instead of why is this happening for me? And then as you get further through some of these experiences, you start to see how it's shaping you, your personality, your attitude, your outlook on the world. You start to see that change from within you. And we both experienced that. And getting married at the ripe young age of 19 and 18, we absolutely needed that experience. And we thought we had everything figured out. We had a plan. We were going to do things our way. And I'm just grateful that God had other plans for us, because we really do believe that it was some intervention from the divinity that allowed us to grow in the ways that we needed to grow, and to really experience some things that were hard and were really difficult, but that strengthened us as individuals and strengthened our relationship. And I think that was a lot of that time apart. Not only were we able to find ways to communicate, and again, this is before the days of FaceTime or even Skype. I mean, it was still letters and emails and occasional phone calls. But that really, I think, gave us the time and the opportunity to maybe be a little bit more thoughtful in how we communicated to each other, and maybe collect some of our thoughts before we were just spouting off emotional responses. And that has been so beneficial to where we are today, where, I mean, look, we have our disagreements, and I do things that drive her crazy, and she doesn't do much that drives me crazy, but
Good save.
that's right. But I go back to that that relationship health and strength that we built in those early years, and just the way that it came to fruition. Again, not something I ever wanted to sign myself up for, but so grateful for that because it's changed now how I try to be a better father, a better dad for my children. So you're right. This is maybe a little bit of a long spin up towards how does this relate to fatherhood. I'm a firm believer that mom and dad working together, having a good love and respect and trust for one another, and being able to display that within the household so the kids can see it is so crucial to just healthy family dynamics. And that is just such a foundational part of who I am today and our journey. That those first few years really taught us a lot. And then again, kind of going into the more things happening that weren't part of the plan. So yeah,
Well,
three out of the
hey,
first.
sorry, can I
Go
pause
ahead.
you real quick?
Yeah.
Because I do want to dig a little bit deeper here in the sense that, I got married pretty young too. Although I wasn't as young as you, but I was 21 and Jill was 20. And one thing that I've always really valued is the fact that we grew up a lot together.
Yeah.
Now, what I'm hearing about your story is completely different because you grew up, or you and Amy both grew up separately in a lot of ways and spent time growing up independently. And so, how did that pose any challenges with you guys kind of developing even certain habits and routines and things like that? Like, what challenges did that throw into your relationship as you came back and now you guys tried to build those things together?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great distinction, Seth. Yes, there were some growing up experiences that we had individually after we were married, but where I would say that we were always just united was our maybe our emotional maturity, and that was because of our the way that we learned to communicate with each other. So I was having different experiences, she was having different experiences. We were on two opposite sides of the world. However, we learned that even though we weren't physically together, we could still have a lot of those same call it emotional growth moments together as we communicated and as we focused on really the things that were going to make our marriage and our relationship strong. So it was kind of both in a way. And again, like I said, I saw a lot of buddies that were married that unfortunately they didn't find ways to continue to grow and develop together as a couple. And they come home, and then to your point, it was, well, we're two different people. And even just beyond there's different daily habits and different routines. It was more there just wasn't an emotional connection or a bond because they hadn't figured out how to do that when there was distance between them. And look, it's not easy. It was very difficult. Not to say that we knew what we were doing. We just knew that it was a priority for us to, when we could connect and communicate, that we made that happen. And when you're overseas and you're in the middle of a sandbox, there's not much to do. If you're not on duty, like there's not a whole lot to do other than watching a movie and go to the gym, and you can only do that so much. So I made it a priority to, when I could, I would go to there was like a phone center. You could call home and use calling cards, and you get all these antiquated relics of the past that we don't even think about today. But that was a priority for me, is making sure that when I could, I was calling home, and we were just able to talk to each other. And when we could email or write letters, we would do that as well. So I think that growth, while it did happen separately, we were also finding ways to grow together emotionally, which allowed those transition periods as we got back together, as I came home, and then when I would leave again, we could always find ways to still sync up and find our rhythm, and just felt very blessed that we were able to do that in what was a very challenging environment.
Well, you mentioned emotional maturity. I think a lot of that is required when you've got that kind of a challenge, entered into your relationship. When you guys get back together, I'm sure there's plenty of difficult things that you guys will run into as you're getting back into her life and you guys are figuring out how to work together again. I could see that posing a lot of challenges, but it also requires a lot of humility and emotional maturity to be able to work through any challenges that you guys run through. But it sounds like the way you guys learned to communicate, and you recognized that you had to communicate very thoughtfully with each other because your opportunities to communicate were limited. It sounds like
Mhm.
that was a contributing factor.
Yeah, Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I believe it was as well. What it was about to share is we did another deployment a few years later, and it was hard, again, and we didn't think there would be number two, but I just do that juxtaposition of from the first deployment to the second deployment, both in terms of the physical experience and the nature of the work itself, right? From my assignment with the military, both were very hard. Um, but that second deployment was a different experience for both of us in the way that, one, we were experienced. We kind of knew somewhat what to expect, whereas the first time was like, look, I don't even know if I'm ever going to see you again, and that was kind of a very real weight that was hanging over us, is like, I hope I make it home. And not to say that you feel like you're invincible after you've done it once and that you can just, you're bulletproof and no matter what, you're going to make it home. But just knowing, how we could stay close and connected, how we could still grow our relationship together despite the distance was very comforting, and it gave us a lot of confidence as we went into it, that shaped our attitudes. Where our attitudes on the second rotation were just night and day difference, and that entire experience, again, albeit it was hard, it was I think even more constructive for both of us. In a way, we both kind of felt like we needed it because we were so young when that first deployment happened, and we were just so unprepared and unready for it. And while yes, we did grow from it, we just didn't have great attitudes all the way through it. We were trying and trying to put on the brave face, but there were hard days, and there were days where, again, we were just feeling really picked on. And then the second time around, it was okay. We know this is going to be hard, but we have the tools, we have the methods,
Mm-hmm.
we have that confidence, and we put a lot of faith and trust in God, and knew that we still needed to prioritize our relationship. And that second deployment was, I think, even more so, called a period of just high growth and maturation. And we were at that point in our mid 20s, a little bit older, but still, I mean, that sounds just like babies, when I think back on it now. But it was a good experience for us to kind of say, okay, we can do hard things, and we know that just with the right attitude, the right mindset, the right belief, we can grow, and we can thrive no matter what.
Yeah, I guess you could make the argument that it's a huge blessing in some ways to go through challenges as a couple that early, because you kind of learn to weather the storm, and you kind of build a resilience in your relationship that I think other couples sometimes, if things are really easy early on, they never build up that resilience, and when things get hard, you can see how sometimes people just bail. and
Yeah.
and so it sounds like that was a component of you guys being able to kind of lay a foundation together as a couple.
Yeah, I believe so. And you mentioned the word resilience, and that is something that I'd like to talk about, and I know we will talk about here, is then some additional challenges that came after or during some of those military years.
Let's dig in.
Yeah, we the first 5 years of marriage, like I said, we were kind of all over, and it wasn't until a few years in that we started having the conversation about kids and starting a family. We weren't rushing to do that, again, because we were so young when we got married. We're like, okay, like, we even back then we recognized, like, no, we don't want to rush into starting a family, but it was important for us. And after I got home from my first deployment, I think it was about a year afterwards, we started getting serious about the conversation of starting a family. And then I don't remember when it was that we officially started trying to have kids, and things weren't happening. There were health challenges and some things that were kind of surfacing. It's like, man, that's odd. Like, it seems like it's a lot easier for other couples to start a family. Like, what's going on here? And that kind of led to years of discovery and consultations and surgeries as we worked through infertility. It was we basically did everything we could, or that was available to us at the time, to start a family biologically. We before my second deployment, just before I left, we tried in vitro, and it was unsuccessful. And again, I just remember thinking, okay, like we're going to do in vitro. I'm going to leave on my deployment. Amy will be pregnant, so she'll have the baby. About 9 months into this, I'm gonna set up my leave so I can come home on leave when the baby's born. And like we had it all figured out, right? That didn't happen. So there was a period of just feeling really just kind of sorry for ourselves and picked on and get a little bit of a, why God, we're good people. We feel like we can give a good home environment to a child. Like we're not perfect, but we're also not completely unhinged, destructive people. We feel like this would be good. Why isn't this blessing coming? And it didn't. And another few years passed by, and I got home, and I remember there was kind of a moment in time where we just got to the point where we recognized that what we were desiring was good. I mean, the desire to start a family and raise children was a good desire, but we were maybe just too dug in on how that should happen. And the idea of adoption had been floated, I think, by a friend a couple years earlier. And I remember the time when I heard, it's like, no, like that, I can't do that. Like that's just, I didn't have a good reason why. They're just like, no. I'm like, we're not going to be able to adopt. Like we're going to have a kid. Like this is part of the plan. We're going to get pregnant and have a kid.
So, real quick, Jordan, just to set the timeline. So, how long did you guys try before you started kind of considering this adoption conversation?
It was probably 8.5, 9 years we've been married.
Wow.
Before we opened up to adoption. And the crazy thing is, those I guess 8, 9 years of marriage, so maybe it was call it 4 or 5 years of trying to get pregnant unsuccessfully, and then it was amazing from the time that we finally opened up and started to have some humility and some conversations around adoption. It was all that resistance that we met from infertility, all the doors that we felt just kept getting slammed in our face, and we were trying to break them down and push through it and just keep being resilient. And one of the things we're taught in the military is to adapt and overcome, and that was my default program. It's like, okay, we just got to adapt and overcome. Like we just got to try harder. Like yeah. we're going to pivot. We're going to figure this out. And it's once we started on this path of adoption, doors flew open. There was no resistance, and it was just like we couldn't move fast enough. Things were just coming together at a rate and a speed that we had not experienced as we were in those prior years trying to start our family.
So let me slow you down real quick then. You started having discussions about adoption, and at first you were resistant to it. Maybe talk me through the reasons behind your resistance to adoption at first, and then what finally helped you kind of get over that hump to open that door.
I didn't have a good reason other than I was just narrow-minded and maybe stubborn. But I think that's where I had to challenge myself at the time is, why are you resistant to this, Jordan? Like what's holding you back? And there was nothing there that as I did a self-audit, like, I don't know, like just because we've been pursuing this and this is how it's supposed to be. So we're going to make it happen. And then I think you get to a point where maybe some of that stubbornness wears off. You're like, okay, well, we've done just about everything we can do. And I think it was after we did that unsuccessful round of in vitro, and we had made a lot of sacrifices financially to be able to do that. And it was, when you get to the end of that, you have nothing to show for it. It was, I think we had to get to a point of maybe just having some defeat and having some what felt like failures and some losses, to a point where you kind of open yourself up to being coached, to being taught. And that's what it was for us. And so I don't even remember the moment in time when it was, hey, let's consider adoption. Just that I knew after I got home from my second deployment, it was like, okay, let's start pursuing this. And we did. And I believe it was like spring, summer of 2012 when we officially started working on our paperwork. You kind of have to create this profile. We made this book, you're selling yourself a little bit to a prospective mom who's going to give up their child for adoption. So we started working on this and working with an agency. And to make maybe a really long story a little shorter here, We adopted our first daughter, Ella, that fall in October 2012. Her birth mother selected us as her adoptive parents 2 weeks before she was born. Yes, we met her early September, got together with her again in mid September, and that's when she officially told us, "Yeah, I want you to be the parents of my baby." And then 2 weeks later, Ella was born, and we got a call at 5 in the morning or 4 in the morning that she was in labor and the baby was on the way. We scrambled, ran out the house, and drove 6 hours to the hospital to go meet our sweet baby girl. And it was just incredible. So it was a one of the longest journeys we had been on, and one of the most frustrating experiences we had been on. And then it also turned into one of the quickest and fastest experiences and journeys we'd been on, and one of the most rewarding experiences we had we had encountered up to that point in our life. And it was just it was so sweet, and again just taught us a lot of trusting God, because we do believe again here that God had a big influence and role in that. And there was a reason why we didn't have kids biologically those years that we were trying, and felt like we were doing everything right and that it was supposed to happen. If we had it our way, then Ella wouldn't be in our family, and we knew
So,
that Ella needed to be in our family.
so Jordan, let's back up just a little bit because of course, that's a frustrating experience, feeling like you have to sell yourself to parents, and that's got to be really hard. I mean,
Yeah,
I just went through a lot of interview processes, and that stunk. I can't imagine, auditioning to be a parent. But what I want to understand is, I would love to understand kind of how that process went of when she selected you, and
hmm
maybe even the conversation that you guys had with her, or the conversations that you and Amy had together. What did that feel like when you finally got like the yes, this is starting to feel real?
yeah. Like I said, everything moved really fast. I think we met her birth mother. I think it's the only birth mother that we actually met or talked to. It was kind of a we were one for one when it came to adoption. So there was a little bit of
Jordan's
that.
always been a good salesman.
I know, right? Well, something sometimes I can get lucky, but it wasn't me. It was Amy. When we first met her birth mother, it was it was her and her family. She was a teenager at the time when she was pregnant, and so we just immediately connected. And there was this feeling of kind of like we've always known each other, and it was just so comfortable and so familiar. And I remember when we walked away from that, Amy and I kind of looked at each other like, that was like really good, but also like oddly just very familiar and comfortable, almost like we somehow knew these people, but that was the first time we'd ever met them. And not that we walked away, doing the fist pump, like, yeah, we got this, we we stuck the landing. That wasn't it at all. But it was just kind of a feeling of peace and some assurance that, okay, like even if this goes nowhere, what we were now experiencing with pursuing adoption again just felt so much more in line with what we needed to be pursuing at that point in our lives. And then it was we had some communications over the next few days and weeks, and then when we decided to meet again with her and her family, we kind of knew that she'd already made up her mind, that she was going to pick us. It was just more a matter of her saying the words, and and she did. And it was so just again humbling and exciting, and also nervous to hear it, and then have this realization that okay, we're going to be parents, and we're not going to have 9 months necessarily to prepare for it. Again, we've been preparing for 9 years, if you want to look at it at that point, up to that time in our lives. But because we knew that she was about a month away from having the baby, and the baby came 2 weeks early, so it was actually faster than we anticipated. But it was again just very comforting all the way through it. And I know we felt it. I know her birth mother felt it. The family felt it, and it's allowed us to have a great relationship with them. To this day, it's an open adoption. We regularly communicate with Ella's birth mother. In fact, Amy was chatting with her on the phone the other day, and they were catching up. I mean, for 2 hours, and just talking about life and all the things that she's been able to do, and where she's at, and really being able to share our life and our experiences and more about our family. And it just feels just like such a beautiful connection and an extension of our family. So I know it's not that way for everybody. So I sometimes even hesitate to share that much detail, because I know others have gone through that, and they don't have that experience, and it can be very frustrating and very challenging, kind of like what we went through with infertility. So I don't say that to brag or rub it in, but just more to emphasize that I think with anything in life, we have to be open to options and alternatives. And if you have a belief in a higher power or God, or whatever it is, then to put some of your faith and trust in that higher power. And that's what we learned through these experiences, is to put a lot of that trust in God, and control the controllables along the way, with effort and attitude and adaptability. And that's been our default mode of operation as much as we can, and it's served us well.
So maybe last question on this portion is, I'd love to understand, when Ella's born
Mm-hmm.
and you and Amy go to pick up Ella and take her home for the first time, what's
Yeah.
going through your head? What are those conversations like?
Um, you know, I don't know that we had time to think about it. It was kind of just happening, and we were in the moment. But I remember being in the hospital. It was the hospital was great. They knew that we were the adoptive parents, and so we were there with, again, the entire birth family. They gave us our own room, separate from the other room, and so we could be in there with Ella. And it was just, like we'd gone to the hospital and had this baby. And we were able to spend time with the birth family. And then, when it came time to, all right, we've got to now take Ella home and put her in her car seat, and it was kind of, this is real. It was hard for the birth family. And again, they had a lot of peace and comfort in all of it. But when you see this beautiful little baby getting into someone else's car, like, okay, goodbye. I know it was hard, and there were a lot of tears. There were mostly tears of joy, but also just maybe some just pain that went with it, because they knew that they were giving up just a lot of the experience and a lot of access to this little sweet girl's life. And again, they're still a part of it, but just they're not a part of the day to day. And we have that blessing of being a part of the day to day and experiencing that with Ella now. But we got in the car, and we started driving north. And I remember just kind of looking at Amy like, what are we doing? Like, we're not ready for this, And again, we're almost 30 at the time, thinking we're not ready for kids. And I still kind of believe that, now that I'm in my 40s, I'm like, I still don't feel like I'm ready for kids most days. But that officially kicked off the parenthood journey. And then there are a few more kids that showed up later on. And so I'm happy to talk about that experience if you'd like, or pivot to something else.
Let's talk about that.
All right. Well, I probably don't need to spend as much time on this part of it that like I did the first part of it. But again, I feel like everything that should be scripted, or should be part of the playbook, or should be part of the plan, everything that kind of represents the typical, this is normal, this is how things should be done, not by any really design or intention. It just feels like we've always had a little bit different way of discovering things, or way of experiencing things, or having things come into our lives. And so again, we'd struggled with infertility for 10 years, and we had just kind of given up that we were ever going to have kids biologically. We had such a great experience with adoption that we started talking about it, after a few months with Ella and learning how to be parents, and said, this is good, and let's give it a few years. And then maybe 2-3 years down the road, we'll try adoption again, and we'll try for one more. It's just kind of was very high level. Yeah, this would be good to try to get one more, so Ella has a sibling. So that's it basically as far as it went. And I remember it was Ella's first birthday, and we were doing a big party, and all the family was gathering. And Amy, I mean, I love her so much, but she was just acting so very unlike Amy. I guess I'll say it. Very emotional, very just kind of angry, and really we were at each other's throats. And I'm like, what's going on with you? Like, this is not you. And she's trying to like, I don't know. She's like, I don't know what's up. She's like, I'm so just mad and emotional. I'm not sure what's going on. And like, look, one of two things. Either you're terminally ill and we need to get you to the doctor to figure out what's going on, or you're pregnant. Like those are the only two logical explanations here. And like, we know you don't get pregnant, but either way, we got to get you to the doctor and figure out what's going on because something's up. She's like, I know. Like, we got to go see what's happening because physically, emotionally, like, something's wrong. Like, okay, let's go in. And so we went to the doctor, and they do all the tests, and they say, oh, you're pregnant. And we're like, oh, okay. And I remember we heard that, and we're like, well, we had been pregnant before. We'd had miscarriages. We'd had kind of false alarms. We're like, all right, well, it's just kind of another false positive, and unfortunately, we're going to have to go through another experience where nothing really comes from this. And that wasn't the experience. She kept being pregnant, and the baby kept growing, and she kept getting bigger. And then 9 months later, our second daughter, Hallie, was born. And we kind of pinched ourselves, and everything was great. And so now we had these two sweet little girls, and they were, I think they're 17, 18 months apart. So they're pretty close again in age. And not that we planned it, but it's great now that in terms of school, they're only a year apart in school. So the logistics and the activities coordination is a little bit easier, and they're best friends. And it's such a special experience just to see them, how they bond now, and how they lean on each other. So that was our second daughter. And then I remember it was about a year or two later. This was probably the most intentional conversation we had around kids, post adoption and post Hallie was, we think, it'd be great if we could get one more, and it'd be great if it was a boy. And so we did have that conversation. And I think that was the only thing in terms of calling your shot. We got that one right because about 2 years later, we got pregnant with a little boy. Mac is his name. He was born happy and healthy, and he's sandwiched in between a bunch of girls. And then there was one more surprise 2 years later of Ruby that came at the very end. And so it was just almost dizzying there for a time. We went basically 10 years with no kids. And then within a period of the next 5 years, we had 4 kids under the age of 5. We're like, what just happened? Like, how did this all come together? I mean, so quickly. It was such a long, arduous journey, and then it all just came at one. Felt like just a blitz, a rush. And Amy and I even talked about that today. It's like, we were sometimes we almost feel like we missed a part of our kids' childhood because we were just is all we could do to kind of keep up with all these little kids. They were just felt like they all came at once. And now as I've gotten older and they're in school and activities and really doing a lot of exciting things, and we see them developing and growing. It's not to say we feel like we have a better handle on it, but maybe in terms of those hectic, chaotic years of just feels like you're never going to get out of diapers and trying to live your life around nap times, and does the stroller fit in the back? Feels good to at least have some of that behind us, and now we're just enjoying raising these kids. So that was I guess the first 15 years of our marriage was a 10-year drought, and then or a 10-year famine, and then 5 years of abundance, and now we're just doing everything we can, like I said, to take care of these sweet souls, and teach them the best we can, and get them ready for their own challenges, their own experiences. And we tell our kids, like, hey, your life's pretty good. Like, you've got a mom and dad that love you. You've got a home you live in. You've got good friends. You've got ability to participate in sports and their activities, and that's all great. But there's going to be a time in your life when things get hard, and you're going to feel like I didn't want this to happen. I didn't plan for this to happen. The same things I felt. But I mean, ultimately, what we're trying to teach our kids as parents now is how to be resilient. Again, I love that word that you used earlier, Seth, of just how to be emotionally resilient, physically resilient, spiritually resilient, because it's a challenging world we live in, and things can change in just a moment's notice, for better or for worse.
Well, Jordan, I would really like to dig into that with you, because you see it today that there's a noticeable lack of resilience amongst young people and really in adults too. And I think some of that is we're we're comfortable almost to a fault, like you said, like, hey, your life is pretty good. And sometimes I
Yep.
think if stressing about what we're gonna have for dinner today is the biggest problem, or what we want to cook or don't cook, or whatever the case may be, like these little things, if those are our biggest problems we run into that day, then what a blessing. But at the same time, I'm really curious. I think I agree with you. I think it is so important for parents to teach resilience in their kids, because that is what is going to make your kids able to be successful in life, period. You're going to run into challenges. How do you respond? That's the biggest question. How do you
Yeah.
respond to the challenges that you run into? And so, how on earth do you as a dad teach resilience to your kids?
That's a great question, Seth, and it's probably one of the biggest questions that I ponder as a dad. Am I doing this effectively? And I don't know. I mean, I wish I could tell you, hey, I've got this scorecard and I've got these KPIs and like I'm monitoring each kid and like they're either above or below this threshold and like we're on track to say we've successfully teach resilience. Fortunately, it's not that that easy to determine if your kid is ready. And so I kind of think back to my own life experiences, and again when I was younger, growing up, and then just knowing what I went through in my really kind of the decade of my 20s, where I felt like that was just the hits kept coming. It was like one thing after another, and frustration and challenge, and not to say that I was always the best prepared for it, but the resiliency, whether it was taught or caught along the way, it really started to, I think, manifest more clearly in my life. But there had to be something there. It's not just that I was ready for it, because I certainly, mentally or consciously wasn't. And so I kind of think back to experiences I had as a kid growing up, and things that I remember moaning about or complaining about that my dad or my mom would have me do, and things we would experience as a family, and kind of thinking, this is dumb. Like, come on, mom or dad, like what? Why are we doing this? Like, we don't need to do this. And not to say that you want to create difficulty in your kid's life. I mean, I'm not trying to make my kid's life difficult, but I also recognize that some of those difficulties that I experienced as a kid were critical. That was essential for me being able to have at least some of that, even if it was very small muscle memory of what to do when things get tough, as I got older and as I was essentially on my own. And that's what we try to impress upon our kids, is that really we have you with us for 18 years, and we're always mom and dad, and we're always going to be there for you in ways that we can and should be. But in terms of our day-to-day presence interactions, we're together for 18 years. And some days it might feel like you wish you had nothing to do with us, so you could run far away from us. Other days it hopefully feels a lot less like that. And hopefully there's a lot more days like where you do want to be around us. But my goal as a father is to help them understand that they have superpowers, that they have abilities to really, I don't want to sound too cliche here, but to do whatever they want to do in life. And that means they can overcome really any challenge in life. And so we prioritize our faith and teaching that in our home, and having a close relationship with God. But that, to me, while it's the most important piece, it's not all the pieces. We're expected to be agents unto ourselves, and to use our agency to make good decisions and to learn consequences for our actions. And while it's hard as a parent, what I'm trying to do now, what I'm focusing on, is when my child can make a decision and own the consequence, good or bad, assuming that it's not completely catastrophic. Maybe ultimately, like, I don't want my kids getting seriously injured or hurt, and that could be physically or emotionally. But assuming that they can fail and recover from that, I'm trying to create more space for them to have those experiences where I'm present, I'm available, but I can be a little bit more of that coach on the sideline than on the field with them, trying to be the lead blocker and create a hole up the middle. And
Yeah.
that's been more of an intentional pivot for me, and I think even Amy as well, as our kids get older, is when they're little, you feel like, again, you just need to absorb everything and keep them safe, and we wrap them in these bubbles. But as they get older and they're really starting to express their independence more, I don't want to intercept that or interfere with it. I want to honor it while still being dad and still setting expectations about these are our family rules and this is what we expect you to do while you're with us. And we hope that you choose to embrace these rules later on in life, and these principles will carry with you. But I mean, ultimately, I've learned by a lot of my what in the moment felt like a failure, but then as I go through that experience, I can look back on it and say, well, actually, that I don't really consider that a failure anymore. That
Mm-hmm.
experience made me who I am today. So I labeled it as a failure in the moment, but now I look back on it as that was incredibly rewarding, and that quote unquote failure has allowed me to now be very successful in other areas because I went through that. So I don't know how to best do that other than to try to give my kids space to make decisions, again, to experience the consequences of that, and then be there for them to debrief, to share thoughts or feelings when they're ready to. They're not always ready when it's fresh. Sometimes they need a little bit of time to catch
Mm-hmm.
their breath, and that's been another learning is they just like again as a parent you can see like immediately like, aha, I told you shouldn't have done that, right? Like tell me what you learned. Going to them in the moment is not the best way to have that conversation. So it's recording it mentally and then circling back in those quiet times with your kids where you can then debrief on the experience and have a good conversation on what you learned and how do you think that's going to affect your decision making next time.
I like that. I'm going to add to it just because I think this is something that I could have done better and can do better as a parent. Because I think back to, and I'm not perfect. I've been through challenges and things like that, and I feel like I handle them relatively well. That being said, I look back to my childhood and try to look back at why am I able to bounce back from hard things or go through hard things maybe better than other people I associate with or whatever. But I look back at what my parents did, and my dad chose to go back to graduate school. He had a decent job, but he
Mm-hmm.
chose to go back to graduate school and move all the way across the country. We lived in Kearns, Utah, which maybe we weren't doing that good if we were in Kearns, but just kidding. We lived in Kearns, Utah, and we moved all the way to Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And for the next 4 or 5 years, I think 5 years, we lived in Alabama. And then he got his first job in North Carolina. So we moved to North Carolina. We lived there for 2 years. And then he got another job in Georgia. And so we moved to Georgia for 3 years. And the funny thing is as a kid, like you want to stay in your comfort zone. I don't want to move.
Yeah.
But I actually got really used to, leaving my comfort zone, moving into a new situation, figuring out how to make friends again and everything like that, figuring out how to get settled into this new environment. And I got to the point to where I got really comfortable adapting to new environments, which was such a huge blessing for me. And it's funny because I'm a dad and I've been now in the town that we live in Utah for 12 years. And we've thought like the idea of moving has come up a couple of times, and it's just like, oh no way, that would be so hard. And as I think about it, I'm like, oh man, am I doing my kids a disservice by allowing them to stay so much in their comfort zone?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think about I've got a boss that I had a boss at a previous company that I would love to get on the podcast. He's awesome, but his name's Jed Smith. He takes his kids on like these super difficult hikes every single year. Like we're going to hike Kings Peak or we're going to hike Mount Nebo or whatever the case may be. And his kids have just learned that that's what we do. And I remember Jill and me, we wanted to do more hikes with our kids and things like that as they were younger, but they were such like bums about it. Every time we would want to go hike, it's like, what even is the point of hiking? And what I wish I would have done a better job at is, hey, we're going to do it. We're not going to not do it just because you're a bum about it. We're going to go do it because it's hard. And I think just experiencing like I think you build resilience simply by going through hard things. So if we as a parent, I think this is an area where if we're not deliberate about this, we can really drop the ball. because our default is, you talked about being a lead blocker and open up the whole form. Like our default is, hey, we want you to be happy. We want you
Yeah.
to be comfortable. But what we really need to do is teach them to go through challenges. And in order to do that, we have to provide them with challenges to go through. And so I'm really grateful to my parents for taking me out of my comfort zone, even though I probably hated it at the time. I can't imagine my life without being dumped in all these new situations. And so I think as parents, I think we need to be really careful and thoughtful about what obstacles and challenges are we actually even placing in front of our kids to help them learn to overcome them. And that's something that can be very easily missed.
Yeah, that's great perspective, Seth. It's so important again that they have those experiences, and that requires again a lot of times as mom and dad, you go into those environments where they can have those experiences. I think that's what I'm realizing now is I'm the one that wants to be comfortable. I'm the one that just
Yeah.
wants to be home. Like, hey, I already did this. Like, like look, I don't want to go do the tough stuff now. Like that was a different season of life, but I'm not doing my kids any service by just showing them a life of comfort. That's not going to help them. So that's where we've had to challenge ourselves to say, all right, like it would be easier just to go do the comfortable thing. However, we know that all of our growth and really who we are today is a representation of the experiences we had. And a lot of those were very difficult and challenging in the moment. But we've grown so much because of that. So I think the hike is a great example. Again, there's these little things that you can introduce into your family that it's going to stretch them. It's going to require a little bit of a push, and there might be some complaining along the way. But we've had so many experiences like that as a family too. Then it's fun when you see your kids, they get kind of through that first maybe 5 minutes of mental just self-inflicted roadblocks, and then they start to be in the moment and appreciate the experience for what it is, and then you just start to see their demeanor immediately start to shift to something more open and again more coachable, and then you start to see them come alive, and that is important. And I think it's really hard in the world we live in, right? When there's so many uh, distractions, there's so many things that can pull at their time and their energy, and we've got to really think about how do we keep our kids mindful of this limited resource, which is time and energy. Again, my oldest Ella, love her to death, but she's the kid that just she always wants to be doing something, and she wants to say yes to everything, and that is such a great quality because I think there's too many people in this world that aren't willing to accept a challenge and to try new things. That's not Ella. The other side of that is you only have so much time in a day, right? You only have so much energy to allocate to any one particular task. And as you get older,
Right.
right, the need to become even more specialized or just become more skilled in your craft, whatever your craft's going to be, it just requires a little bit more of your dedicated time and your focus. So it's like, how do you really understand what are your superpowers? What is your spiritual gift? Where can you apply everything that you want to give of yourself, your heart, your energy, and then how are you going to build that and allow that to just allow you to um, become a contributing leader, a contributing adult, a contributing mom or father at some point later in your life.
Jordan, I love what you're highlighting there. You've mentioned superpowers a couple times. Your job is to help your kids identify their superpowers. And I think what's really cool about that, and kind of goes along with what we're saying, is sometimes, well, I guess if your kids stay in their comfort zone the entire time, then they'll never discover that superpower. Like they have to be
Mm.
challenged
Yeah.
in order to uncover some of those strengths. And so I think it's just so I think as parents, we just have to remember that our job is to help them grow. More than anything else, our job is to help them grow because the more we help them grow, the more we prepare them for the life that they're going to lead. And it's like you said, plenty of challenges are going to hit them. They're going to go through, hopefully their hard isn't the same hard that we had to go through or whatever, but it probably will be. And
Hmm.
our job more than anything else is to prepare them with that. prepare them for that, and the superpower, helping them understand what their true strengths are and how they can maximize those to overcome some of these challenges, I think is crucial.
Yeah.
Crucial.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well said.
So, Jordan, I've got a couple more questions. I would love to back up just a little bit, because you and your wife, you're married for 10 years before you had Ella. What was the timeline there?
Um, I think it was 9.5. I think we were going
Nine
into
and a
our
half.
10-year marriage before we had Ella. Yeah.
So 9.5 years as a young married couple, like, let's be honest, that's a pretty comfortable life. You can live, with very few obligations. You guys could probably travel the world if you wanted to. Why was it so important for you guys to make this decision and pursue parenthood so fervently like you did?
That's a great question. It's funny when you look back on things, um, and just knowing what we know now. Like, man, if we would have known that it was all going to work out, like we're gonna adopt a beautiful little girl. Like, starting family will come a little bit later, but it's all going to be fine. We would have chilled out a lot more, in those first 10 years. And not to say we didn't enjoy our time together as a couple. Like, we should have traveled more, we should have done this, and we should have done that. And like, it was so much easier before we were trying to coordinate babysitters and again, just being present for kids' activities. Uh, Again, a big part of that first decade of marriage, there was, as we talked about earlier, some of that personal growth and growth as a couple, and then there was just, again, a lot of just time away from one another. But we, again, all these experiences just made us stronger. The separation for the military service, very hard, but made us stronger, made us more appreciative of one another. Just increased our I think our capacity to love for each other. And then with the infertility, the years of struggle and frustration, and there was never a time where I felt that either one of us blamed the other party. It was never this is your fault or this is my fault. It was always very much just, we're in this together, and we're going to get through this together. And we don't know what the next steps are. We don't know how it's all going to work out, but we know that as we prioritize our relationship and love one another, and I mean love in the sense of a verb, not a noun, like showing that we love each other, serving each other, uh, demonstrating it with more than just words, but with actions. That was always present in our relationship, in our marriage, and it allowed us, again, to continue to grow as a couple. And and then, when the children started coming on the scene, everything that we had done for those first 10 years of really the personal improvement, the relationship improvement, just the unity and I think the cohesion that we had as a husband and wife has made us better as a mom and dad. Look, I'm not going to say that we see things eye to eye all the time, especially on parenting too. I mean, I get labeled as drill sergeant dad, and she's kind, compassionate mom, and so we balance each other out. She's more than happy to tell me when I'm going over the top, and I'm more than happy to tell her where I think she's not being strict enough. And and I think that's great. I mean, I love just opposites. I love that principle of there's good and evil, there's light and dark. Not to say that I'm evil and she's good. I mean, she is good, and I probably am
Yeah,
more
what are
evil,
you
but
saying there, Jordan?
yeah, yeah. I walked into that one. But anyways, I mean, we can be united in purpose and still have different methods of operating and parenting, and even how we show our love to each other. Those can be different, but they can be very united in purpose. And that's something that, while again, I would love to give you a measurement on that right now. Like, this is how it's affecting our family. This is what's going to be for them 10 years from now. I can't really do it. It's more just a matter of, we know that our kids are going to see us as mom and dad working together, making decisions together, working through disagreements in a, call it, constructive fashion. A lot of this world too is so polarized when someone has a different opinion or a different thought, and and we want to teach our kids that, hey, it's okay. Like, if you don't see things the way that someone else sees them, you don't have to get violent or aggressive, right? Just because you don't agree with someone else's position, there's a way that you can communicate and also try to be curious and understand, why does the other person think the way they think, or why does that form their opinion? And there's a way
And maybe
to,
I'm looking at it wrong,
yeah,
right? No, that's what I'm saying is helping them understand that, hey, my position actually may not be exactly right
yeah,
either. So I should seek to understand, because I could be the one that's wrong. I've run into
exactly.
that plenty of times in my life.
Oh, I know. I do all the time as well. It's one of those things I continue to catch myself on, is you get in those moments. And again, I think this is where emotions take over. Like, no, I know I'm right. It's just like, I know I am. I just, I, and then whenever I find myself saying those, I know, it's always kind of a good trigger. Like, maybe you don't.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yep.
it's time to ask a question and to create some space for listening instead of talking over someone else.
So, Jordan, I still feel like you guys went 9 years. This is really, really hard.
Yeah.
And you guys are trying for a long time. Why not just give up? And why not just live, you and Amy, probably have a happy life? Like, why continue to pursue fatherhood in the first place?
I don't know that we ever thought about it that way. you know? um, we always wanted a family, and so giving up was never really an option we gave ourselves. And I think that's probably again why we were so just determined when it comes to infertility. Like, we're just going to keep trying. Like, there's got to be another procedure, there's got to be another surgery, there's got to be something else, like some other
Yeah.
drug or something that's going to solve this, because we were determined that we were going to have a family. And we just again felt that within us. I remember even those early years when we were married, when it wasn't like we were actively pursuing a family, but we knew that was kind of fulfilling the measure of our creation. That's just what we wanted. And
Well, Jordan,
so
maybe I can ask it a better way though. Maybe my question is how has it changed you now that you've been a father and had children and experienced almost 10 years of not having kids
mhm.
with Amy, and then now you've experienced, what did you say, 14, 12 years?
Yeah, let's do the math on that. So
How old's
Ella,
Ella?
she's 13. She's almost
She's
14.
13.
Yep. Yeah.
So now you've been a dad longer than you weren't a dad, in your marriage relationship, at least. So how has it changed you?
Um, let me count the ways. It's taught me patience. It's taught me compassion. Um, it's taught me, the tough thing about being a parent is, and this is where I struggle, is because too often than not, I feel like someone's holding a mirror up and I'm looking at myself through my kids, and the things that I like about myself, I see in them, and the things that I don't like about myself, I see in them as well. And I find that in those moments when I see my daughter doing something rebellious, or just saying something like, "Oh, that's something I would have said to my parents," and that just, that really just irks me. And it's hard to again allow them and to let them have those moments of um, individuality without uh, having a reaction to it. Um, and again, I think the reaction is just, it's coming from a place of, that was me once upon a time. And when you see some of those things come through your kids that you don't love about yourself, I think that's the part where there's a feedback loop here as parents and kids, where most days I also, and I'm not just saying this, I feel like I learn more from them than they do from me. and and that again can be rewarding, but it can also be a little bit unnerving. You're like, well, I hope they are learning something from me, because I see all these things coming back to me in terms of the way that they express themselves, the way that they make decisions, the way that they um, choose certain influences or friends in their life. And there's things that I like that they do, and there's things that I don't like that they do. And again, I think without fail, every time when it comes back to, I see them doing something that I don't like, it's because I'm seeing a piece of myself or my past in some of those decisions that they've made. And I'm like, oh well, I did that and it didn't turn out good for me. So I don't want you to do this because I know it's not going to turn out for you. But this is the hypocrite as I talk through that, right? Is we had what 20 minutes on the topic of resilience and giving your kids an opportunity and a space to learn from those experiences, even when it's happening and when those things are real time. It's really hard to just create some separation or some distance so that you don't get pulled into the emotions of that. And that's where I go back to being very patient and being very mindful of, as a father. While I certainly haven't cracked the code, it's an area where I feel like I've learned and I've grown a lot. An area where I hope I can continue to learn and to grow. There's a lot of personal attributes and characteristics that I know that I have that make me successful in my career and other ambitions in life, and those are great. And they serve a purpose as my role as a provider for our family. But I find that a lot of those things necessarily the transferability is sometimes not that great within the home. Me being determined and focused and having just kind of a dogged work ethic, when I bring that intensity into our family, sometimes it kind of feels like, all right, what's up with that?
Relax, Dad.
Like, dang, Dad, like chill out. I'm like, well, no, like I'm just kind of ramped up. This is the intensity I have to bring to what I do, right? In terms of some of my core missions right now in my season of life. And so I have to take a step back. And this is again where I think Amy's a great coach for me. Is she'll let me know when, hey, a little bit over the top, just dial it back, maybe just a little bit. The kids need that. They need to see that you can be that role model of hard work and discipline and setting big goals and dreaming big. Like that's all great, right? But there's also other attributes and other just needs that they have that you need to show that you can be compassionate. You need to show that you can be kind, that you can listen, that you can be there for them when they fell short of a personal goal or something was hard for them. Instead of being the dad, it's like, hey, just dust yourself off, get back up on your feet. That can be the right answer, but there can also be maybe a better answer as well. That's a little bit more rooted in compassion and giving them another way to get back on their feet when they're ready to do that.
I think one thing that you're touching on a little bit is there's an irony in there that we talked about the fact that our job is to help our kids grow.
Mm-hmm.
And yet the funny part of that is that becoming a father and taking on that responsibility unlocks an incredible amount of growth in yourself. And there's no other way. Man, I watched this super depressing comedy bit this morning where this guy was talking about just, we've been conditioned to get married and have kids and it's all useless and bad for you and whatever. It was terrible. It was stupid. But I listened to that and I just thought, how sad, because all of the best things about me have come from my decisions to get married to my wife and have someone there. You talked about Amy being a great yin to your yang and being able to cool you off when you're a little too fired up or whatever. And you need that. Like you need a partner in life to help you recognize that, hey, I got bad news for you. You're not perfect. Here's some of the stuff that's going to help you to be better, and vice versa. I can help her see opportunities for her to grow. And there's an incredible amount of humility required in that relationship in order to make it work. And the reason that so many of those relationships don't work is because that humility is non-existent. It's lacking. And so then on top of that, you throw kids in the mix and you get humbled 10 times over. But you also increase your ability to love, your feeling of responsibility. It completely expands your feeling of responsibility of, man, I got all these people I got to take care of. I got to provide for them. I got to teach them. And through doing that, you become so much better of a version of yourself than you ever could become on your own.
That's right.
And so I hate some of those messages that you hear going around, and really some of the trends that we see with lowering birth rates, marriage rates, increasing divorce rates, things like that. Because listen, you are robbing yourself of incredible experiences and joy by not taking on the responsibilities of marriage, parenthood, and so on. And so what a sad situation where you fail to unlock that growth on purpose.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Seth. And a lot of this too is as we kind of circle back to some of the themes of this conversation is, doing hard things is what allows that growth that's necessary, not only just for us personally or as families, but I think from a broader kind of societal lens, right? This is the world needs people that know how to endure hard things.
Mm-hmm.
And I've talked about some of the struggles and the challenges that we've had. I mean, when I was younger, and even things before I was married. But I got to tell you what, I mean, yeah, I've done some tough stuff in my days, but I still feel like being a father is the most challenging role or task that I've ever been called to serve in. It's hard. And that's what I get concerned about as well, is when you just kind of look at some of the societal trends, is that not enough people are willing to embrace that discomfort and
Mm-hmm.
step up. And it's not about perfection. I think that's the other kind of misnomer that is really circulating, is there's always an answer for everything, and we get lightning quick responses. And I feel that there's a little bit of a growing trend of people just believe that they have to know everything and they have to have all the resources at their fingertips. And that hasn't been the case for me. I mean, it's not to say that I've done anything in my life where I've gone in completely unprepared. I mean, I think there's different moments where you look back and say, I probably could have been a little bit more ready for that one.
Nobody's ready.
But nobody's ready.
Yeah, we're all winging it, trying to figure it out. You know.
That's right. We learn by doing. I mean, I learn by doing. And there's a certain amount of just maybe call it mental conditioning you should be at least preparing for as you take on new tasks and new roles. But there's no more important work than the work of a parent, a mom and a dad working together, trying to create an environment of love and respect and trust, and really just teaching these principles that allow not only the family to thrive, the children to thrive, but this just creates a better world. This is what concerns me, is that not enough people are willing to take on that challenge of just knowing it's going to be hard, it's going to be challenging. You're going to make a lot of mistakes. Trust me, if you think you've lived a pretty perfect life, just become a mom or a dad, and you'll feel pretty quickly like, all right, I've got some strikes against me. But that's a great thing about being a father and a mother, is you get an opportunity every day. And that's, again, I look at all the things that my kids teach me. They're so forgiving. I mean, I make so many mistakes, and no matter how much I uh, screw it up, and not even trying to screw it up, my kids are so graceful with me. They just, Dad, it's all right. They express their love to me either through words or through actions, and they let me keep trying. I find that just so inspiring and so energizing, is when I see my kids, when I've maybe not had my best moment or lost my temper, or again got a little bit too intense about something that just didn't matter. Kids are like, hey, Dad, like, we still love you. Like, it's okay. Like, we get it. We'll keep working with you. It's like, thank you. I know I need that. So
Well,
I
that's the
really hope.
beauty of it, is the love that you get back. Like
Yeah.
the more you put into it, you get such a huge reward back from the love of these kids and
Yeah.
your family as a whole, and being able to feel that love in your home. Like there's nothing better.
Yeah. Yeah. There's nothing better. When I think back to when I was a kid growing up, and some of those moments where I didn't agree with my dad, or didn't agree with something my mom said, it's like, man, I hope I was as merciful and as willing to extend some grace that my kids show me. Like, I don't know if I was enough, but I also remember those moments when my dad specifically, when he came to me and said, hey, I'm sorry, like, I didn't handle that well, and I'm sorry. And it was a kind of a very short statement, and I've always looked up to my dad, and I still do. And I remember those moments when, yeah, like, he did some things. And again, nothing bad. My a great dad, but just those kind of heat of the moment things where tempers get short, and things are said. And but I never lost respect for him losing his temper, or for getting after me for being a knucklehead, for doing something dumb. Like he was doing what he was supposed to do. Where I grew to appreciate him and respect him and love him even more is when he came to me and would show me that humility, would model it and say, "Hey, I'm sorry. Like I didn't handle that well, and I'm going to learn from it, and I hope you can forgive me." Those things really stand out, and so I've thought about that again when I am in those moments where I don't have maybe the best reaction to something my kid says, or I, just again, you kind of get caught up in this work brain, and you're kind of thinking a little bit more in terms of corporate America, and you can carry a certain tone or a certain demeanor, and then you have to turn off work brain and turn on dad brain. And I think in those moments of transition where it's still kind of work brain, and then I still have this kind of level of intensity, and Amy lets me know about it all the time. It's just, I think, from the military where I don't even realize that I'm doing it right, but I just
Yep.
maybe am a little bit too amped up. And she's like, "Hey, just like turn it off and put on the different hat now, and be here for your kids." But my kids have been so good to be receptive to what I can share with them, to how I can teach them, but to also recognize when that, hey, I'm just a person too, and I make mistakes just like you make mistakes, and there's times where I need to take a beat and say I'm sorry. I think the more that we can show our kids that we're just human, that we're just people, that we're
Yeah.
trying to do the best we can, the more accessible we become, the more real we become to them, the more they feel like they can confide in us, they can talk to us, whether it's something they're not proud of, or it's just something that they need mom or dad for them in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. You mentioned looking up to your dad quite a bit. What other lessons did you learn from him that have kind of impacted you being a father?
Yeah. I grew up in a family, and even still to this day, I think we're a little bit better about it now. We never said I love you, but I always felt loved. I don't know that we never felt like we had to because we showed it. And my dad's a great example of serving, and his love language is service. All those years where Amy and I were moving around, and it felt like we were more transient than we were in any one ever fixed location. My dad was always the one showing up with the truck and trailer and saying, "Let's load you up and move you to your new place." There was never any complaining. When I was overseas, Amy and I bought a house, and she was trying to fix it up and remodel it and paint it. He was there every night, helping Amy at the house. It's just he just serves without any kind of expectation of something in return. I think it's just kind of that quiet but very intentional way of working, and showing up when people need it, that has been such a kind of a critical example to me of, like, even in, you think about like kind of sports and athletics, and like I played sports growing up, but I was never a trash talker. I don't even know how to do trash talk. It'd be really bad, if there's a trash talk competition. But my dad taught me, he's like, you just let your play do the talking. Like, if you're good enough, you don't have to say anything. And I think that's so true for anything we do in life. Just let your actions, let your contributions say everything about who you are. And then words are just supplemental to it. Words can maybe just support what you're doing. I think too often is what we see in this world is a lot of people say things and they don't actually do things. And so there's a lot of
Yep.
moving of the lips, but not a lot of action to support it. So I've always appreciated my dad, and just how he's just been had that quiet way of serving and being there for his family, and working hard, and enduring his own challenges and hardships, and showing us you can adapt, you can overcome. And we would do family vacations growing up, and we were always like, we were lower end middle class at best. And so our family vacations were road trips and the camp trailer, and we didn't do the Disneylands or Disney Worlds. That just wasn't in the budget. But we would go hiking and camping, and my dad had this thing for taking the road less traveled, and it would drive us crazy because we'd be going down this dirt road, and we were, as kids, like, "Dad, what are you doing? Like, take the other road, it's faster." And like we're trying to get from point A to point B quicker. And he would have this thing with going down the road less traveled, and then miraculously we would have some just incredible encounter or experience because we were on the road less traveled. We were doing things and in places that no one else was. And by being willing to take the road less traveled, uh, we were in a position to have something that someone else didn't have. And I've really thought about that a lot as I've gotten older as well as, and actually kind of see that coming out in terms of even just how I make decisions is sometimes I find myself wanting to take the road less traveled and in a lot of things, and not just to be a contrarian, but because I'm like, actually, sometimes the road less traveled is the better way to go. I mean, we live in such a world of efficiency where it's always about, the quickest way to get from point A to point B is a straight line. And yes, there's a lot of, I think, efficiency and effectiveness in that. But I mean, sometimes you do need to take that squiggly path
Mhm.
and see some different things along the way and allow that road less traveled to open your mind and to open your eyes to there's a different side of this world and there's different ways of thinking or experiencing things. So while it drove me crazy as a kid, now I'm like, I'm kind of glad you took some of those road less traveled. We wouldn't have had some of those experiences had you not taken a left instead of the right.
Jordan, thank you. I have one more question for you because I think you're in a unique position where, I mean, there's thousands of people struggling with infertility and considering adoption and things like that. And so I maybe just want to give you the space to give what advice would you give to any young couples or any couples that are dealing with challenges of infertility, considering adoption? Yeah, talk us through that.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I'd say don't give up. Just the most important thing you can do as you're going through that trial and that hardship is to love each other, to support each other. You're gonna always be there should always be a husband or a wife, a companion to each other. Again, we're gonna have our kids in our home for a very short season. There's a 20-25 year span where we have these kids with us, and then as married couples, you've got to figure out what happens after that, right? As grandma and grandpa, and as new kind of seasons of life introduce themselves, and any time, any effort you invest to strengthening your relationship, and it's different for everyone because I'm not saying that what Amy and I went through is what everyone needs to go through. You don't have to be on the other side of the world. You don't have to be enlisted in the military. You don't have to do the things we did, but just be united in purpose. Love each other, understand each other's needs, and if the family is the decision that you two have made together, there are so many avenues, there's so many just resources, and there's so many ways, whether it's medical advancements or resources when it comes to adoption. There are so many kids that need a loving mom and dad. And I think ultimately that path and that decision for every family is a little bit different. But one of the things I learned as we were going through this that I shared is just be open, be receptive to being steered and directed in one direction or another. And um, I I thought we were gonna after we adopted Ella, I thought we were gonna adopt the rest of our family. I just thought this is how our family is going to be formed is through adoption. It was beautiful. It was an incredible experience, and I'm so grateful that we had that. But I know if it would have been we got pregnant through in vitro or something else, I probably I would feel just as grateful for that experience. So there's not necessarily one answer for everybody, but just I would say be open to all the options, all the resources, and in the meantime, love each other, be there for each other, because you're going to need each other not only now but for years to come, especially when the kids show up. Because if it's hard right now while you're dealing with infertility or wondering when are these kids ever going to come on scene, trust me, it pales in comparison to when they're actually in the house and you're trying to figure out, man, how do I do this mothering thing and this fathering thing. That will really stretch it to your limits. But as we talked about here, there's no more rewarding work in this world.
Awesome. I've got one more question for you because I like to ask everybody on this podcast this question. But what is the legacy that you hope to leave behind with your kids?
Wow, I should have prepared for that one. I think of all the father figures I've had in my life, not only my dad, I had a grandfather I really looked up to, some other people that have been very influential. And I really kind of want to be the best of all those things that I see in my own dad, my a grandfather, and a few other people. It's like if I could just be greatest hits of all these all these people that I've come in contact with, then I would consider that a success. But that might be too ambitious. To simplify it, I would say I would want my kids to know that I believed in them, that I inspired them to think big, to to understand the effort and the work that's required to do great things, but also to have the confidence to know that they have more power and potential and capacity and capability than probably what they fully can comprehend at this stage in their life, or really even as they get older. I think too often than not, we underestimate our ability to do good, and I want to be thought of as I inspired my kids to be able to um, make this world what they want it to be. Leave their own lasting legacy by chasing their own dreams, and doing it through their goodness, their work, their contributions. Knowing that things necessarily aren't handed to us, but as we set a goal and as we work towards that goal, it's that journey that makes us the person that we want to become. So yeah, that was probably a little bit more long-winded than what you're hoping for, but I'm just hoping that they can learn from that inspiration, that motivation, and have that belief that they can do great things in this world.
That's perfect. Jordan, thank you so much. Really appreciate you letting us learn from you today.
Thanks, Seth. Enjoyed the conversation.
Big thanks to Jordan for sharing his story today. Here's what I want to leave you with. Most of us spend our lives fighting the detours. We had a plan. This wasn't it. So we push back, we force it, and we try to break down every closed door. Jordan and Amy spent nearly a decade doing exactly that. And it wasn't until they stopped fighting the detour and started following it that everything changed. Whatever road you're on right now, if it feels like the wrong one, if it feels like too many doors are closing, maybe it's worth asking whether you're being redirected rather than denied. The road less traveled is harder. But as Jordan's dad showed him, and as Jordan is now showing his kids, it tends to lead somewhere worth going. New episodes drop every Wednesday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Share this one with someone who you think needs to hear it. And if you know a dad with a story worth telling, please reach out to me at dadicalpodcast.com, and I'd love to chat with them. As always, don't sleepwalk through fatherhood. Be dadical.